What's poppin', sexies? It's your boy here, and we are back for some more Fae content. Today we're doing a tier list for the Rearmed Heroes, and what sparked me doing this video was, of course, having access to the new Rearmed Hero on the banner. We got Rearmed Plumeria. So I thought now was as good a time as any to go ahead and do a tier list for these guys. We have 11 Rearmed Heroes in the game at the moment, so we're going to just tier all of them at once. And the criteria for this particular tier list was more so focused around how good the units are going to be with a lot of merges invested into them. Because, of course, while you're summoning for your Rearmed Heroes, the main selling point to them is, of course, the fodder that they can grant while still keeping the merge, the extra copy to merge in or, like, use. So that is the main selling point to them, but as you're summoning for your fodder and all that, you're going to be getting a lot of merges on these guys. So I wanted to at least make the tier list reflect on that to some degree. Like, how good are these units going to be for usability? How good do they actually make use of the skills you may be wanting to put on them? And then also on top of that, like how effective they can be at plus 10 and things like that. So while the fodder is really good, while Ganglot is one of the more unique ones, she's the only melee infantry type. So that gives her like just an amazing assortment of fodder skills she can pass around. I wanted to focus more on like how good the units actually are in play, in like combat and stuff. So that gives more credence. I'd be more inclined to plus 10 a unit like Alchrist, for example, than Ganglot. Even though Ganglot has better fodder that she can give out, having a plus 10 Alchrist would be amazing because he can just blow up anything on the player phase. So that is the criteria here. That's like the main thing we're going to be focusing on. I've also got some builds pulled up for all these guys so we can take a look at how good they can be in combat and things like that. So we're going to start things off with Alchrist. I have him in the S tier. So this is just an example build that you can give him. Of course, his arcane weapon is really strong. It gives him a instant desperation effect, half a null follow-up, attack and speed up 6, -1 special trigger, and nullifies penalties. So it's a very strong player phase weapon. Also combos really well with his B skill that nullifies enemy guard, cuts their defense by 30%, and then it also does it does something else. It does like speed and defense -5 on them as well. So just playing up his ability to use desperation even better. The nullify guard portion here is very strong, and we just recently got attack and speed pledge, which is infantry only, so it's a very good skill to give to him. I've given him attack and speed finish 4 for this example build, but also Hexblade is a really nice skill for him too. And there's a lot of other A skills. Flash Sparrow he can also run, but I think pledge is probably the way we want to go here for right now. Just getting the acceleration on the C skill. And then the +5 true damage when triggering a special here with the healing. So I think this is probably like a better combo overall. Blade Session to maximize DPS. And then, of course, with Deadeye, this guy is going to be going ham. The main selling point to him, if you've got access to like Catria and Cordelia to give him the triangle attack support, he can really go nuts. He's hitting 4 times in a row. 2 of those hits are probably nullifying DR because he has nullification of guard and acceleration and -1 special trigger. So just good luck trying to tank this guy. It's very difficult. He is an amazing player phase nuker. So that's why we've got him all the way at the top. And plus he gets like physical null follow-up and a bunch of other good fodder skills you can give out, like Times Pulse 4, Special Spiral 4, Finish skills, all those really nice infantry skills he can get. So I have him in S tier. Then we have the Ingrid up next, the Arcane Ingrid. I do think she's a little better than Tana, mainly because she's a melee type, so she has access to Guard Bearing 4 and a lot of other good melee skills. Whereas Tana, being a flying type range unit, she doesn't have as many good B skill options as Ingrid does. Ingrid is also a really nice frontliner. Her arcane weapon is probably the best one in the game, like just flat out. This weapon is so cracked. I remember when I saw this, my first reaction was, wait a second, that's inheritable? Like, they literally could have just made this a perf weapon on a new unit, and I would not have been surprised whatsoever. So, very good stuff there. She can also pick up, like, Ruptured Sky. A lot of these units can get Ruptured Sky, but, I mean, it's good fodder to duplicate, of course, so we got it on this build. Guard Bearing 4, Guidance 4, because she's a nice frontline option. You can just throw her in the front, and then she can face tank with all the speed she's got. She's like a god sort of unit. And then Knightly Devotion is a pretty nice perf skill that she's got. Gives her all stats up 9. Gives her Canto Rem, and then also 7 recovery after combat. So just a lot of good skills on her. A lot of good skill fodder options, and then she's just a really solid unit as well. So we've got her in S tier. And then finally, to wrap up the S tier, we have the Arcane Plumeria, who came with a lot of good stuff on her. She has Wings of Mercy 4, if you want to give that out, which is really solid for Gale Force Tactics and AR. But I think, obviously, Firestorm Dance should be the go-to. Her being a dancer, she can actually use it, unlike all the other Arcane units up until this point. And then her dance skill is really solid, too. It's giving charge, it's giving foe penalty doubler, and then it's giving all stats of 5 to the target dance ally. And then it's also doing all stats -5 to the nearest foes in 5 spaces. So just adding more usability to that foe penalty doubler while also making them an in-combat beast. And then she's also got the new Defense and Res Ploy 3, which is a really nice debuff skill. Turns off, like, the final boss support effects, like, Grand Strategy and also Bonus Doubler and things like that. And then you're inflicting exposure, too. So even if the enemies don't have those skills active, like Grand Strategy or Bonus Doubler, you can just inflict exposure there, and you're doing a lot more damage anyway, while also doing defense and res -7. And then Fire Flood Boost is a skill I decided to go for this build. We just inflict guard on the enemies, and then we're getting attack and res up 7. All she wants is attack and res. And this weapon is really strong. It's a very nice nuking weapon. I do think it's a little better than the Arcane Red Tome. The Red Tome has a pulse effect on turn 1, which is nice, and it can enable you to, like, get set up with Times Pulse 4 and Special Spiral 4 builds. But this one does more damage. It's giving you 15 true damage based on attack, and then you still get the guaranteed follow-up, and you get some DR as well to help you survive to the next attack. So it's a very, very powerful weapon, and as we can see, she's just no shortage of good fodder. Being a flyer, you can also give her, like, Soaring Guidance and Guidance 4, so she's in the S tier. Okay, next up in the A tier, we have Chrom here, Fallen Chrom. Very long-awaited unit and a very good unit for fodder. He's got Fate Unchanged, which lets him repo and then move again. And it also inflicts exposure when he does that. So it's a very strong skill there for damage and also getting a lot of actions on your phase. Arcane Devourer is a weapon that can hang with the best of them. It's one of the best arcane weapons. It might even be the second best one besides Arcane Lewin. So I really do love this weapon. It finds its way on, like, every God Sword build that we run. So definitely some good stuff there. He makes nice use of Gale Force because the -1 special trigger and the acceleration on hit with this weapon just makes him a very good Gale Force option. Flared Sparrow should go without saying. Then Flow Desperation and Alarm Attack Speed. It's like the bread and butter build pretty much for these Gale Forcing melee calves at the moment. And he's just very good. Like, you look at this fodder, he can also get, like, distant attack speed solo if you want to give that out as fodder. So there are some very good options for him. It's a very clean-cut build. It's very easy to get the prerequisites for this stuff, too. So it can be easy for him to just insta-build any melee cav that you want once he's got all this stuff in tow. Alright, then we've got Ophelia up next in the A tier as well. So Ophelia is pretty good. She's a nice nuking unit, but one downside to Ophelia that some of these other arcane heroes don't have is that she doesn't have a unique skill anywhere outside of her arcane weapon. So, pretty much, you just want to give her, like, a bunch of nuking skills for the most part, and she can be an effective nuker. I'm showing off a different build here than the typical, like, Special Spiral 4, Times Pulse 4 build, mainly because I wanted to show off Flare here. So, Flare is the only arcane hero that can get that is her. And Flare is pretty solid, does a lot of damage, and then it has recovery. So we can make use of Remote Sparrow here to get the DR on the first hit, and then we can recover ourselves up with Flare on the attack. And then Magic Null follow-up to cut DR in half, and then negate enemies being able to do, like, guaranteed follow-up, so we have a better chance to live. And then, of course, Pledge for the acceleration, so we can just ramp right into Flare and get it off on the next attack, and then blow the enemies up. And Blade Session for more DPS there. So, like, should be a pretty bread and butter build, but also, like, the Special Spiral 4 and Times Pulse with, like, Dragon Fang build works pretty well, too. So there's a lot of things you can do with her. She has access to a lot of really good fodder skills to give out, like finishes as well. So she's certainly deserving of A tier. And then finally, we have Arcane Tana to wrap up the A tier. She's also a really good unit, being a flyer. Soaring Guidance, Guidance 4, what else you want me to say? These skills are just busted as hell. We can also go for Flared Sparrow on her too. Her arcane weapon is pretty good. I may like Alchrist's weapon a little bit better. It's better on the player phase, but this is still pretty good too. Gives you 30% DR on the first hit, and then all stats up 5, and gives you a guaranteed follow-up, and then bonus damage based on whatever special cooldown costs the enemies have. The lower their cooldown count, the higher the amount of true damage you gain. So right now we're in a spot where a lot of units are just running low-cost specials, like 2 or 3 hit specials, and they have -1 special triggers, so it really piles on a lot of damage with this weapon. But there are now starting to see like high-cost special builds with Gambit 4, so it's not quite as crazy as it was on her release, since Gambit 4, of course, but it's still pretty good. And then Flared Sparrow should go without saying. Soaring Wings is a really nice B skill, because she can warp within 2 spaces of an ally in 2 spaces. And then it also gives her Canto 1. So, like, she can jump in, she can use drawback on an ally, and then Canto herself up 1 space, and severely increase the amount of spaces that unit could warp in with Soaring Guidance or Guidance 4. So she has a lot of play, a lot of utility, and a lot of options there. And for fodder, she's just like a clinic. So another unit very deserving of being in the A tier. Then we move on to the B tier. We're going to start with the Arcane Grima here. Now, this unit is pretty good for fodder, because she's the only armor type and only dragon type rearmed hero that we have at the moment. So you can give her a lot of good stuff like Scowl 4 and Dragon's Wrath and like Counter Roar, and the save skills are also an option. The level 4 fighter skills are also an option. So she's just like, she has access to so many unique skills that it's very good. Also like Armored Flow and Armored Bacon. So that's really good too. But the downside with her is that all of her best fodder skills, like Hardy Fighter and the save skills, are 3 skill inherits that you need to use to get them. And then you would only have room left for 1 level 4 gold border skill after that. So you can't pick up like a full build on her with 1 inherit as you could with some of these other guys, like Arcane Crom, for example. You just instantly build a unit from head to toe. So that's the one downside, but she's still really solid, of course. Her weapon's pretty good. The bad thing about her weapon is that there's only like 1 good dragon unit to build that's free to play, and that's Ina, the Halloween Ina. There are some good ones as 4-star seasonal demotes, like the Halloween Naga, but that costs a lot of orb investment if you want to get her to +10. So her weapon is a little bit limited in that regard, but she's still a very strong unit. Her A skill also nullifies effective against dragons and does like all stats -8 on the foe. So she can be a seriously effective unit to use. So also she scores the highest. She has the highest BST of all these units. So at +10, she is very competent for arena mode. All right, and then finally in the B tier, we have Aether up next. Aether is also kind of in a similar spot where her weapon is insane, but there's only like 2 or 3 units that you would want to give this to, because we don't have that many beast units that we can build, and let alone beast cavalry types. I feel like most of the free-to-play beast units have been flyers or infantry. So it's kind of sucky that the one arcane beast weapon we have at the moment is for cavalry beasts. But it's still a very strong weapon, and there are still a couple of units you would want to give this to, so it's not bad. And in combat, this unit is very powerful. She's a really good player phase option. Her weapon gives her like all stats up 9, and then... Actually, hold on. Let's pull that up. Power of Nihility, because I don't remember every single thing about it. I know it gives her recovery when she procs a special. So let's see here. If number of allies adjacent to unit is less than or equal to 1, gets all stats of 9, gets special acceleration on hit. And then if you deal damage to the foe using a special, you recover HP. Basically like Surge Sparrow healing right there. So that's pretty good. So she's got a lot of sustain. She's got a lot of in-combat stats, especially with her weapon doing like Binding Necklace on roids. And then you combo that with this. And then Beast Sense 4 is like Close Call 4 essentially for beast units, while turning off their condition to transform. So that's really nice there. And then she defaults with Alarm Attack Speed, which is the go-to bread and butter C skill for all of your melee infantry types. So that is very good. She's very strong. She's a really nice unit. It's just that her fodder options are very limited, as is her weapon. So that's why I've got her in the B tier along with Robin. But they're both really powerful units to get at +10 and then use them yourself. So they are in B tier here. Next up, we come to the C tier. We're starting things off with Ganglot. Now, in terms of fodder, Ganglot is probably the best unit on the whole list. Well, maybe not counting the flyers, because they got Soaring Guidance and Guidance 4. But the amount of good fodder skills on Ganglot can't really be stressed enough. She gets, like, all of the infantry god skills, like Close Call 4, Godlike Reflexes, Vital Astra, Time Pulse 4, Oath 4s, like Attack Speed Oath 4. She can get Pledge, Attack and Speed Pledge, and finishes, and like all of that stuff. Prime 4, etc., etc. So there's just no shortage of good skills you can give to this unit. The bad thing is that she's not a particularly great unit on her own either. So I was scratching my head, like coming up with what kind of build can I even showcase for her that might work out. I was thinking to do like a distant counter build with Null C4, but she's green, so she is at a disadvantage against both Veronica and also Hinoka. And if they have a pre-charged Deadeye or a pre-charged Enclosure, they're just going to blow her up in one shot. So I decided to refrain from showing that off. So we're just going for a nuking build here. We've got Finish 4, we've got Spiral 4, and Time Pulse 4 to blow the enemies up with Ignis, and then Hardy Bearing to nullify Vantage effects, and also Desperation effects, which can be nice on the enemy phase if you want to enemy phase with her. Her defense is pretty good. You could throw her in the front lines and then tank a shot and then blow something up with Ignis. A lot of the melee threats are more reliant on Desperation as opposed to being reliant on Fire Sweep. So I think Hardy Bearing is a pretty clutch option you can run on melee tanks. So that's why I went with that for this example build, but she herself is not very good as a unit, and then also she lacks any perf skills, which is pretty rare. Most of the Arcane heroes do have at least one, so that is a little downside to her, but as we said earlier, the fodder is just like on another level. And then finally, we've got Alfred over here. He's going to wrap us up for the beats here, and his weapon is really nice, actually. I like Arcane Shang quite a bit. Gives you Omni Breaker, it gives you -1 special trigger, all stats of 5, and special acceleration on hit. So all very powerful effects and just combos very nicely with a lot of weapons. The special acceleration on hit is more valuable, in my opinion, than Inflicting Guard like this guy does. We're going to talk about him in a second. But because there's a lack of ways to get special acceleration on hit on passives, particularly if you're not an infantry type, because, of course, infantry units, they have access to Flash Sparrow, and they have Pledge now to go with. So they've got some ways to get it, but for non-infantry types, it's very difficult to actually get special acceleration on hit. So Arcane Shang can work out quite well there, as can Arcane Downfall, which does the same thing. So any of these arcane weapons that do that are already in a good spot with the -1 special trigger as well. So this is just an idea build for him. Gambit 4... he's very lacking in good skills that he can pass out. So Gambit 4, I would think, is probably like the best thing you can give him, because it's just a one skill. All 4 of your inherits would be taken up to get this, and it's not like you want anything else that he can get anyway. Like, Alarm Attack Defense is pretty cool, but for the most part, Alarm Attack Speed is the more desirable of the two. So just being able to use a full inherit on Gambit 4 makes the most sense. Or if you want to pick up Arcane Shang and then something else there, you could be able to do that as well. So that's why I've gone ahead and given him this for the example build. But Homeboy can be a solid frontline option, even if they pierce the DR of Gambit 4 with like Deadeye or whatever. Look at this defense. This man has 76 raw defense. We were all like jaw-dropped when we saw this skill just giving raw 20 defense. And it really shows. Look at this. 81 attack, 76 defense without like any other passives accounted for. That is nuts. Like, this dude is a stat ball among stat balls. So very good stuff. He's actually okay. I don't mind this guy whatsoever. But then we have this guy. So Arcane Lift, he is dead last. He's in last place. I think there's not really too many ways you can play him. He does have the most perf skills out of all the Arcane heroes. He's got 2 of them. He has a Unique Beast skill, and he also has Open the Future. So he does have that going for him, I guess. But as far as like fodder goes, he can't really get the best stuff. And even if you did give him the best stuff, like Distant Attack Speed Solo or Flared Sparrow or something like an Alarm Attack and Speed and stuff like that, he's not really the best user of that stuff because he's not really fast. He wants to be like a slow tank, and there's not really a lot of good options for skills for that for melee calves. So this is what we got to go for here. It's similar to Alchrist, except we have an A skill instead of a B skill. So we go for attack and defense unity here. Just to unity stack. His B skill wants him to have an active penalty to give attack and defense -5 to the enemies and also give him special acceleration on hit. So with this weapon and then his comboed B skill, he inflicts guard, he's got special acceleration, he's got -1 special trigger, and then he's got Omni Breaker as well. So it's a pretty good combo. Unfortunately, he's like one of the only units that makes good use of his own weapon. So like giving this as an inherit to other units, I feel like the Arcane Devourer rather is just better. Even on slower units, I think I would rather have this because it's giving you all stats of 5. It gives you the -1 special trigger. It gives you null follow-up. You have to be faster, which may not always be the case with slow units, but then it still gives you the 40% DR on the first hit and the special acceleration, which we explained is better than inflicting guard on non-infantry types. So I feel like even for slow units, you'd rather just go with Arcane Devourer for the most part. So that's just a big RIP with this weapon, to be honest. I did a full video doing builds for sword units, and not a single unit had this weapon equipped. just goes to show like where this weapon stands. And as far as like fodder, attack, defense, unity, while amazing, really nice with legendary Robin support, it's not like the craziest thing to be duplicating on these rearmed heroes. So, I mean, there you go. And then alarm, attack, defense, like we said, there are better options like alarm, attack, speed. So let me know what you guys think about this Arcane Heroes tier list. I tried to like give as much love to units that have good fodder and also are amazing at +10. So that's why these guys are higher than these two. Whereas like a +10 Robin and a +10 Aether would be amazing in combat, but their fodder options are a little bit harder to just deck out other units with. So that's why they ended up in B tier. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. This is your boy Tacho signing out. So take care, fellas, and I'll catch y'all again on the flip side.